agent will be faster. The next tab is the analysis tab. And basically what happens is that you have one voice agent that's actually talking to the customers. And then you have another agent that's looking at the responses, looking at the transcript, and then doing an analysis to give you analytics. And we're going to talk more about the dashboards in just a second. But you can basically create different criteria like booking links sent and confirmed, customer questions answered, conversation steered to booking, agent professionalism. You could also add a criteria like, let's call it legal advice. And then say the agent didn't provide legal advice to the customer. And this will be analyzed on the conversation. And then we're just going to click add criteria. Now you can see legal advice was added right here. And now we're basically getting statistics to make sure that the AI doesn't give legal advice. You can also get specific data from each conversation, like the customer city, the booking outcome, the discount code if it was applied, customer phone number, service type, interest. So if you want an AI to take some information out of the conversation and add it to something like a CSV file or a Google Sheet, we can do that by clicking add data point, then choosing what kind of data we want. If you want a yes or no, if we want a number, a string, etc. So here we can get a number maybe, and we can do price. Let's do service price. The price of the service the customer wants, like this. Click add data point. And now we are also going to save the price after a conversation is done. We can also set a language if you want to. So if we are running a conversation in English, usually we can add language right here, which might help a bit with how precise it is. We're going to look at the results later of the analysis, but for now you just need to know that it's there. It's very useful to know about the analysis because this is kind of the data, the information you want to show the client on follow-up meetings when the agent is actually live, to show them, okay, the agent has done this and this and this. 99% of the time it behaves like it should. Sometimes it maybe doesn't. We are going to fix that like this. The analysis makes it very easy for you to continuously improve your voice agents. The next thing we want to take a look at is the tools. And you can both add specific individual tools and you can also add MCPs, which is very, very cool. For the voice agents that we are building inside of this full course, we are usually not going to be using the MCPs. This is mostly for like maybe internal agents would need like an entire suite of MCPs to do different things. But usually you just have tools. And there are some system tools that are default, like updating a state, transfer to another agent, transfer to a number, voicemail detection. And we're going to go more in depth about those later in the course as well. But similar to what we did inside the workflow, we can add individual tools like webhook, client, and integrations. And we're going to look at the integrations in just a sec. But you can basically create individual tools and connect your 11 Labs voice agent to whatever else you want using the webhook. And I'll show you how to do that as well in this course. Let's take a look at the widget, because what I've showed you right now is how you can build a voice agent that's designed to pick up phone calls, right? We've talked about hanging up the phone and how it should respond instantly when it gets a phone call. But you can actually also create website widgets that are voice agents as well. The way those are going to look is that you're basically going to have a widget in the bottom right corner of a website. You can see when I click widget up here in the preview, it'll basically look like this. And when someone clicks on this, they're going to have this little website widget pop up where you can then either send a message or you can talk directly to an agent on a website. This is also something very cool that you at one point could offer to your clients if they want that as well. And inside of the widget is basically where you change all of this information. Like, do you want to collect feedback from the customers? 1 to 5. So after the call, you want like to have a feedback collection where they can give you a score. Do you want it to have as text only mode? You can do that as well. So it only shows text. Do you want a real-time transcript of the call? There's a bunch of settings here that you can fix. Also, how do you want it to start? Should it start collapsed or open? You can also change how it's going to look. So what colors it should be, first and second color. You can also add a specific image when it's closed. Like what should it show instead of this chat box right here? There's a bunch of customization you can do. And later in this video, I'll also show you how you can implement a widget like this and how you implement it to your website as well. It's pretty easy to do. We just use this code right here, click copy, and then insert it on our website. But I'm of course going to show you how to do that later as well. And let's see, design detailing doesn't have a voice agent inside of here either. So maybe adding something bottom right corner could be very useful too. And the last thing you have access to is the settings right here. You basically have a bunch of settings that you can set, like when do you want the AI to say something after complete silence, like 7 seconds is what is like what is set to default. Basically a bunch of like individual settings that you can set if you want to. But for now, we're just going to use the default settings. We might, when we actually build it out for the client, we might want to change it there. But for now, we're going to keep it as is. All right, so all of these points that we have looked at now, they are under configure. So that is the tabs that we're going to be sitting in when we are building out the voice agents. We also have the monitor tab right here, which is the tabs that we're going to be sitting in after we have built it. And when we're looking at the performance, how well does our voice agents actually perform? If we go inside of dashboards, inside of here we can see standard information like the number of calls we have had, the average duration, the total cost, the average cost, how much in dollars we have spent. We can also go down and see the success rate and the total conversation duration. We can see a bunch of information inside of here. But the most important tab is actually this one. Let me show you that. The tab that you're going to be spending the most time inside of is the evaluation tab, because what we did inside of analysis is that we set those criteria to what we want the agent to do. Like, is it professional? Like, did it send the booking links? Like, did it steer the conversation towards that booking? And when we set those criteria, it will show up inside of the evaluation. We can see 100% of the time right here for both main and test, which is the two agents that we created, it is 100% always professional. That is really good to know. We can also see that right now it's actually not even sending the booking link because we didn't set that up. It was just a demo. So we probably want to set up the tool where it can send that text message. We can also see that at 100% of the time, it is steering the conversation towards the booking based on 4 calls. And 50% of the time, the AI answered the customer's question. So this is probably something that we should work on, right? That the agent should more clearly and put more focus on actually answering the customer's questions. But I hope you see the power of this. We can now set specific criteria under analysis that we want to evaluate it on. And then inside of dashboard, inside of evaluation, we can then see, okay, how does it actually perform? That is insanely good to know how to do. Inside of analysis is also where we set the data collection. And that is what we can see right here. We can see the information that it got. So the booking outcome, the customer's phone numbers, if we give those, if we gave a discount or if we didn't give a discount. All of this information is things that we can store as well and we can export, etc. This is probably not something that you would use for that much unless you want to save some information from the conversation. We can also see logs of the workflows, so how it's going in each call inside of the workflow tab under dashboard. We can see the audio, so like the agent's response time, response generation latency, turn taken latency, so information on that. We can see what tools was used, when it errors, what errors it gave, etc. We can see some information about the large language model we're using. We can see the latency of the RAG that it's using and how many documents that it has accessed. And inside of the advanced tab, we can see what language that it's speaking and how many agents that are running at a time. So inside of the dashboard is basically where we can see a bunch of information for how our agents are performing. And that becomes very important in the future when we actually deploy these agents. We can also see the specific conversations that we are getting. We can see the transcript right here. We can see the overview. We can see if the call was a success or not a success. You can see it actually said that it failed right here because it didn't meet these criteria, didn't send the booking link, it didn't steer the conversations towards the booking. We can also see how long the call was, and we can basically see and search in all of these conversations to see how it performed. Tests are very cool as well. Let's say we want to test a bunch of different scenarios very, very quickly. We can either sit there inside of this text box and just go back and forth a bunch with our agent, or we can create these tests. And what this allows us to do is basically run a bunch of scenarios very, very quickly. I can just do this, and now you can see it's running the test back and forth, and then it's going to show me the results. If you're building something where you need to test a bunch of different scenarios, tests are very, very useful to do just that. You can see this test was actually failed because the agent didn't describe the packages, but pivoted the conversation. So you can set criteria to what is a success example and what is a failure example. And then every time you change something in the prompt, you can have a couple of tests prepared just to make sure it still performs like it should. I don't use this too much, but it's really good to know that it's there. And the last thing you need to know about is the users. The users are basically everyone that calls in. So if someone calls in multiple times, it's going to be multiple conversations, but only one user. And you can see this is my user right here, the user that we've been testing on. And inside of here, we can also see all of the conversations. Later in this course as well, which is a whole new opportunity in itself, we're also going to talk about outbound agents, because usually voice agents were really only good enough to receive incoming calls. But now we can actually also use voice agents to call leads, like from a Facebook ad, for example, or create these batch calls where we can use things like WhatsApp or telephone to actually call up lists of leads. So let's say we have a list of a bunch of old leads. We can actually use a voice agent to call everyone again, which would be very expensive if you wanted a human to do it, and then have AI book people in from that, which is really, really interesting as well. Now you know most of the things that you can build with ElevenLabs agents. We actually still need to build it out, right? So you know what this platform can do now, which means that you'll be able to follow along when we are building it out for the actual client.